Recording in progress. Good morning, everyone. Marcel, I just want to check if we are quorum at the moment so that we can start.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, members, colleagues. Chairperson, we have a quorum. We may start. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcel. Good morning, honorable members. Good morning to the Auditor-General and the delegation from office and all other support staff. I just want to welcome the honorable members, the Auditor-General, and the delegation. Welcome to the Select Committee of Social Services. And thank you very much for being here to give us the briefing around the audit outcomes for social development for the previous financial year. We will move now to the adoption of the agenda. Can I get a mover for the adoption of the agenda? Marcia, can you please flag the agenda? Honorable members, the agenda is in front of us. Can I get a mover for the adoption of the agenda? Honorable Breed.
I will move to adopt the agenda.
Thank you very much, Honorable Breed. Can I get a seconder? Honorable Makwele.
Thanks very much, and greetings to honorable members, Auditor-General, staff. Chair, I move to second that we move with the agenda as presented. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Makwele. The agenda is adopted. So we move to the next item on the agenda, and it's the apologies. Marcel.
Again, good morning, Chairperson. Chairperson, we received apologies from 3 of our members, Ms. Adrianse, Ms. Duplessis, and Ms. Aris. They'll be joining the meeting late. I have an apology of the Minister of Social Development, Chair, that was unavailable for this meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Marcel. Honorable members, the apologies is presented by the Secretary. Can we get a mover for the adoption of the apologies? Honorable Mukwele, your hand is still up. Honorable Breed.
Thanks, Chairperson. I move to accept the apologies.
Thank you, Honorable Breed. Honorable Chirwa.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I'm very curious to find out about when the minister saw that they would not be available for this meeting. I'm asking this, Chairperson, because it's going to become a tendency that we're unable to chaff or to rather block. That's going to keep occurring when ministers don't take select committees in particular, because they don't have this behavior in portfolio committees. But with select committees, they send apologies last minute and they don't show up for meetings when we need them to account in the very same meetings. Please, Chairperson, I know it might sound like a fast stretch now, but it's something that has occurred before that I've experienced and observed, and we need it to no longer be done. If a minister if they get a notice in due time, they must send an apology in due time so that we can postpone the meeting. We need the answers from the minister themselves, because they are the head, they are the political head of this department. Thank you, Chairperson.
Are you adopting the apologies?
No, I'm not. I just wanted to find clarity on when the minister sent the apology.
All right, now it's fine. So we will move to Honorable Sibanda.
Thank you, Chairperson. I move for the adoption of the apologies.
You are seconding the adoption of the
Yes,
apology.
and then also let me comment something, Chairperson. There is a mistake which is happening within us as members. The latest speaker, she should raise that concern before the adoption of the these apologies. And then you waited up until you asked for the second, of which procedural that's becoming wrong. I will understand her concern if he raised that issue before the adoption. Now, your question was based on any seconder of the adoption of the apologies. That's why I'm raising the fact of the seconding the adoption of the apologies. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Sibande. Honorable Kirwa, we did receive it in due time. That is the reason why the agenda was changed, so that we only can get the briefing from the Auditor-General. So, but we will reach out to the Minister and the office to indicate that we really need them to come and account. Thank you very much, honorable members. So, honorable members, we will move forward. I will now give over to the Auditor-General so that she can give a briefing to the committee. Over to the Auditor-General.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members. I am Michelle Margaman, a Business Unit Leader in the Office of the Auditor-General. We were delegated by the Auditor-General to come and brief the committee on the outcomes for social development. I am in charge of the portfolio for social development, amongst others within the business unit. I do have with me my Deputy Business Unit Leader as well, Mbali Tsotetsi. She has put on her camera. And I also have with me Puleng Mulapo. He's the Senior Manager in charge of the Department of Social Development as well as SASA. And we are here to brief the committee on the audit outcomes. One of the key things that we do as the Auditor-General is that not only do we audit financial statements, compliance, as well as performance information, but we also make sure that we do a data analysis and we look at some of the key projects and give insights to the committee so that you're also fully aware of some of the key areas that we look at, some of the analysis that we do on the data, so that you can also appreciate how service delivery is being impacted. So we do have, honorable members and chair, the audit outcomes as well as those insights. My Deputy Mbali will take you through the first part in terms of the audit insights, and Puleng, the Senior Manager, will then take you through the insights that we have also highlighted for you, and we also have recommendations for the committee. I am aware that the presentation was also shared as well as the briefing document. So thereafter, we will then take questions from you, Honorable Chair. If you will allow us, can I hand over to Mbali Tsotetsi as well as Puleng for the presentation?
Yes, you may proceed.
Thank you so much. Mbali, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chair. Good morning to you and good morning to the honorable members. I will then start with the presentation. I just want to check with my colleague. Okay, she's now sharing the screen of the outcomes. Thank you so much, Chair. As Michelle has indicated, we will be briefing you on the department as well as the entities that report to the Social Development Department. Starting off, I want to just highlight our mandate as the Office of the Auditor-General of South Africa. We exist to strengthen this country's democracy by enabling oversight, accountability, and governance in the public sector through auditing with the aim of building public confidence. I then move to the next slide that talks about the accountability ecosystem. So what we are saying here is that as the HGSA, we are currently implementing a strategy that we call Culture Shift 2030, With this strategy, we want to move all our auditees towards doing good for the benefit of the citizens of this country. And we are saying that if we are to achieve that, all the role players within the ecosystem must play their roles effectively to support the achievement of the mandate and also performance that is also ensuring that there's transparency in terms of reporting. So the reports must be credible as well, and there must be accountability for wrongdoing. And we also want to see integrity within the institutions that we audit. This ecosystem basically highlights the role players starting from the officials on the ground and also highlights the oversight over these role players. Just to talk to it briefly, Chairperson and honorable members, on the left-hand side, you have all the leadership and decision makers that are given specific roles to ensure that departments and entities deliver in line with what is promised in the annual performance plans on an annual basis. So the officials on the ground must ensure that as they're doing their work, they are reporting accurately, maintaining all the checks and balances that must be in place. And then senior management must review the work of the officials and monitor, ensuring that there's accountability in terms of complying with legislation and also reporting in a manner that is accurate and complete. The accounting officer has a specific role which is clearly outlined in the PFMA in terms of supporting senior managers and officials to adequately report, that is credibility of reporting, but they also have an important role of ensuring that there's consequence management where these officials are not playing their roles as required in the PFMA and also the policies of the departments and entities. They are supported by internal audit units and also the audit committee. These are independent assurance providers that are provided for in the PFMA, and their role is critical in that they must ensure that they review internal controls to ensure effectiveness thereof before the Auditor-General comes in and do the external review. So their role is really to support the accounting officer by flagging where there are gaps in the internal control environment for the accounting officer to clearly then deal with those gaps before we come in and audit. So their role really is critical in this ecosystem as well, even though they are independent from the entities that we do audit. Then next to that, there's an executive authority, which is the minister, the political head of the department, and the entities reporting to the department. Their role is also to support the accounting officer or accounting authority in delivering on the mandate of the department or the entity. They must also support them in issues of consequence management, where it's clear that the culture is not geared towards accountability and transparency. On the right-hand side, Honorable Chair, that's where we find all the oversight role players and also the supporting departments. For instance, where entities have issues or challenges in implementing legislation around procurement, there's always National Treasury that must give guidance for them on what needs to be done in those areas. There's also Public Service Administration, planning, monitoring, and evaluation to provide support in implementing the government policy. Then we have the committees, like this Committee of Parliament, that is also there to exercise oversight over the work that is done by the Social Development Portfolio. We are saying that as Auditor-General South Africa, we also have a critical role to play in the ecosystem, in that in doing our work as mandated by the Constitution, we must provide audit insights. And our insights, as Michelle has indicated, are not limited to only financial statements, but we also look at insights that have an impact on the lived experiences of the citizens, and we'll highlight those to the committee today. And by uprooting these insights, we also want to influence the role players, especially the accounting officer and the accounting authorities, to ensure that they address the gaps that we may identify, ensuring that the real root causes are identified and dealt with accordingly. But we are saying that, Chairperson, if they are not taking heed of our recommendations, we can also use our enforcement mandate. So in 2019, the Public Audit Act was amended to give rise to a process that is called material irregularities. So with this process, we can then take extra steps in terms of ensuring that accounting officers do comply with their PFMA in terms of taking the right actions where there's irregularities and financial losses. So Chairperson, this is just to highlight the key role players in the ecosystem, and also then how does this support the delivery to the citizens of this country. Moving on to the next slide, we just want to show the portfolio ecosystem. So we have the department at the top, Department of Social Development, and then the agencies that support the work of this department. We have South African Social Security Agency, which is SASSA, and also the National Development Agency. There are also funds that are also a party to the work of the department, which are also highlighted. But most of these funds are not working in a manner that we can say that they were fully delivering to the citizens, because they work as and when it is required. For instance, if there's a disaster, that's when that kicks in to support the citizens in terms of that disaster. So our outcomes today will in the main focus on the department and the two agencies that we are highlighting here. In this slide, Chairperson, we just want to take a step back and look at the recommendations that we made last year, noting the outcomes of the year 22-23. So our main recommendations were really around ensuring that there's engagement with all the role players within the ecosystem to ensure that there's appropriate measures that are being implemented to resolve material irregularities and repeat audit findings within the portfolio. We also recommended the filling of key vacancies, especially at the department and the National Development Agency. And lastly, also they made a recommendation for the use of preventative control guides to assist oversight functions to ask the right questions during their roles. What we are seeing as a reflection, Chairperson, is that in the current year, we still note that the internal control deficiencies that we highlighted in the prior year have not been fully addressed, and this will be also articulated in our report this morning. In terms of vacancies, there was no satisfactory filling the vacancies, especially at the department and the NTA, because those vacancies still exist. And lastly, in terms of reporting on performance information, we still note that the gaps have not yet been addressed, and therefore there was no improvement to the credibility of the performance reported in the annual reports, and that will also be unpacked in our presentation later on. Chairperson, as I start, we just want to show the picture of the outcomes over the administration term starting from 2019-20 to the recent year that we audited, which was 23-24. So you will note that in the first year of administration, there were 5 auditees that received unqualified audit opinions with no findings, what we normally term a clean audit. And this includes the 4 funds that are indicated are not always active during the year. And one of them was the department. What we are seeing currently is that there's been a regression in the current year when you compare to the first year of administration as well as the year 22-23. So what has happened is that the department as well as the NTA have moved from unqualified with no findings, which is a clean audit, to unqualified with findings. And then we'll further unpack then why they moved into that category. Chairperson, as I move on to slide number 7, that's where we then look at the overall message in terms of the outcomes for the year 23-24. So as I indicated, the department and the NTA regressed from a clean audit to unqualified with findings. And this was in the main because they had findings in terms of their performance reporting. So their performance reporting is not credible in that there were material errors that were identified during an audit process. In addition, the NTA also had findings on compliance with laws and regulations. SASSA has remained unqualified with findings. So the current culture that we are seeing is that SASSA has not been able to prevent non-compliance with legislation, especially on the area of irregular expenditure, which was also reported in the prior year. Additionally, this year also reported a paragraph in terms of consequence management where it was not properly implemented. Overall, within the department, we're also noting a regression in that there are similar issues that we identified in the prior year and were not properly addressed, and some of them then resulted in the department regressing to unqualified with findings. So in reflecting, Chair, on the root causes, starting with SASSA, what we are noting is that SASSA does not have the right processes in place to record information regarding beneficiaries' inquiries, and therefore they cannot report adequately and accurately in terms of how many people came through and how many were assisted by them within the timelines that they've set in the annual performance plan. There was also lack of consequence management within the entities and the department, and we'll also unpack that a bit later on. In the main SASSA, the issue is around also the grant system, that it's not effective and it's not integrated with other government agencies or databases to confirm whether the people that are being paid grants are eligible to be paid those grants. So we've made some recommendations to the role players in the ecosystem, starting with the officials, senior management, and also the accounting officer authority. And we also made recommendations to the minister in terms of how do we turn around then these findings that we have reported to the portfolio. In the main, looking at the mandate of the department, it's around a disbursement of grants. So there's a need to ensure that the systems are reviewed and are improved to ensure that people that are being paid are indeed eligible to get the grants, and also to ensure that they are reporting correctly in terms of inquiries that they are able to deal with during the year. There's also a need to implement consequence management for transgressions against legislation. So in the main, those are the recommendations that we made to the ecosystem of the social development portfolio. Chairperson, the first part of our reporting is on financial statements. So we did review the financial statements that were submitted to us on the 31st of May. And in reviewing the financial statements, we noted that the National Development Agency submitted financials that had material errors. However, during the audit process, they were able to correct those errors, and therefore they then unqualified. But the rest of the entities within the portfolio submitted financial statements that did not have material errors. So the impact then thereof, it means that with the NDA, their system is not able to identify those errors before they can submit for audit. So there's a need for them to improve their systems to ensure that their financial reporting is always accurate and complete and aligned to the reporting framework that is applied by the entity. Moving on to the next slide, Chairperson, we now talk about performance planning and reporting, which has an impact on service delivery by the portfolio. So starting off on the left-hand side, that's where we indicate the quality of the performance report. So you note that the information that was submitted or the report that was submitted to us had material errors. But even after the audit process, all the entities were not able to correct or make adjustments for those errors so that their reports are credible. So just to reflect on the findings thereof that resulted in them reaching that status of material misstatements in their annual reports, on the department, what we noted is that some of their indicators were not well defined. And these talk to the GBV shelter establishment in each district, and also the one that talks about Kuseleka centers being established within a district. We also noted some areas where the information that was provided to us during an audit did not support the reported achievements by the department. So as a result, that resulted in them having material findings in their audit report around their performance that they reported in the annual report. With the NDA, what we noted was that also the information that was submitted to substantiate what was reported did not agree to the actual achievements. And then with SASSA as well, for the two indicators, one relating to percentage of disputes resolved within a stipulated time frame, and inquiries resolved within a stipulated time frame, both of them were not in agreement with the evidence on the ground. So all the entities then had findings in terms of credibility of the reports that they have submitted. In the main, the root causes are around the inadequate systems and proper record keeping to ensure that there's alignment between what is reported and the evidence submitted. So what is the impact then of these errors now that still there in the annual reports? Firstly, on the department, it is that the GBV indicators and targets are not useful for measuring and reporting on progress against what was planned in the APP. And also for the HIV/AIDS indicators, it means that there's misalignment of indicators, which was what caused the material misstatements. On SASSA, the lack of adequate systems to track the inquiries that they are receiving from the public also results in or contributes to the outcry from the public concerning the turnaround time for processing their inquiries or disputes. On the area of compliance with legislation, we noted that both SASSA and the NDA had material findings, which were also then reported in their audit reports. With NDA, they had findings on the quality of financial statements, as I indicated that the financial statements that they submitted on the 31st of May were not accurate and complete in all material respects, and they had to make adjustments during an audit process. So that resulted in a non-compliance. We also noted that NDA had non-compliance because they incurred fruitless and wasteful expenditure, so they were not able to prevent that as required by the PFMA. Also, in terms of consequence management, that was not properly applied. With SASSA, as I indicated earlier, they could not prevent irregular expenditure, which is similar to what was also reported in the prior year, and they were not able also to effect consequences properly, fully aligned with the requirements of the PFMA. Then moving on to irregular expenditure, just to unpack the amounts that were incurred by the portfolio for the year 23-24, you will note that there was an increase from 39 million in 22-23 to 41 million in 23-24. And the top contributor to the 41 million was SASSA, which incurred 34 million irregular expenditure, followed by the department with 5.8 million, and then lastly the NDA. So the impact of the irregular expenditure means that for all the three entities, there was a breach of the key 5 pillars of procurement in terms of the Constitution, which is procurement must be equitable, it must be fair, cost-effective, transparent, and competitive. So with SASSA, in the main, you will note that with the leases issue that has been reported for a number of years, it's around competitiveness because they don't go out to bid, they continue on expired contracts. There were also issues of transparency at SASSA and DSD in the main because procurement was not approved at the right delegated authority. So in the main, those were the key reasons that resulted in irregular expenditure for the portfolio. So the lead on that being SASSA, as I indicated. When we move on to the next slide, we further then unpack consequence management, in particular in dealing with irregular expenditure. So the PFMA requires that accounting officers and authorities must investigate all cases of irregular expenditure, and they must then take the required actions, be it applying consequences in terms of disciplinary action or making recoveries where they must recover financial losses against those that were involved or liable for the financial losses. So in looking at the movement then in dealing with this irregular expenditure for the portfolio, you will know that in the prior year, there was about R500 million of irregular expenditure in the portfolio, and that has moved now to about 190 million rand. So there was some movement in that some irregular expenditure was investigated, and it was then condoned or removed following those processes. But there's still a balance that is remaining that needs to be dealt with. So some of the reasons for not then dealing with all the irregular expenditure were around the delays in completing investigations into these matters and also lack of effective consequence management. So as we indicated earlier, SASSA had, SASSA and the NDA both had findings around not following the proper processes of consequence management. So the process is that the accounting office authority must investigate, and then depending on the recommendations of the outcome of the report, they must then apply those recommendations. So there were instances where we found that the accounting authority did not then follow those recommendations and apply them accordingly to effect consequence management. With regards to fruitless and wasteful expenditure, the portfolio incurred an amount of about 300,000 of fruitless and wasteful expenditure, and the lead or top contributor was the department, followed by the NDA and also then SASSA. So in the main, the reasons for the fruitless and wasteful expenditure was around penalties and interest that was incurred by, firstly, the NDA, for a matter where there was unplanned renovations that were done, and also then there was interest incurred on late payments. With SASSA, it was also interest and some legal costs that was involved. So those were the main contributors to that fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Moving on, Chair, to the material irregularity process. So as I indicated earlier, the Public Audit Act was amended in 2019. And since inception of the process, we have identified 5 material irregularities within SASSA and 1 at the department. The material irregularities were in the main relating to financial losses that were incurred by SASSA. And these matters date back to 2014, when SASSA made some payments to a service provider, and these payments where there were no services that were rendered for those services. So what we've seen to date is that after we raised the MIs, SASSA has taken some actions to address them. And one of them was that they have recovered financial losses in regards to the 350 grant payments that were made to ineligible beneficiaries. They have also went through disciplinary processes for officials that were identified. There were 2 investigations that were instituted by SASSA, and we've also noted some internal control processes that are being improved. Just a highlight or observations from the MI process, starting with SASSA. So as I indicated, SASSA then withheld or recovered about 145 million electronically from the alleged overpayments relating to the grants of 315. And they've also then entered in some memorandum of agreements with the banks to also try and prevent further financial losses. On the 2 MIs that they paid or made overpayments to a supplier, they also conducted investigations working together with National Treasury. There were recommendations that were made by these forensic investigations, and the accounting authority has since then implemented those recommendations. However, the recovery process is still in progress because the service provider involved is undergoing a liquidation process. In terms of the department, the MI that was identified is being dealt with by the accounting officer, and they have investigated, and they were given recommendations to address or to respond to the issues. They are currently undergoing disciplinary hearings for the officials that were flagged by the investigation. Then moving on, Chair, to the next few slides, are just unpacking the MIs in more detail to indicate what was the nature of the MI and also the status thereof. I will just go through it quickly. As I indicated, with the department, they acquired assets at prices that were higher than market value. This resulted in them incurring a financial loss. And the accounting officer has since conducted an investigation. They appointed an external firm to conduct an investigation, which was completed in 2023. And they are in a process now of implementing those recommendations through the disciplinary hearings that are taking through with the department against those individuals that were highlighted in the report. When it comes to SASSA, there were 5 MIs that we've identified to date. The first one on slide 16, it's dealing with the payment that was made, Chairperson, in 2014 to a service provider that was administering grants at that point in time. And the payment was not supposed to have been made. The service provider was not entitled to that payment of 316 million. So when the MI process came into effect, we did raise an MI in this regard, and we required the accounting authority to take the right actions to deal with this irregularity. So what happened is that the accounting authority then worked with National Treasury to identify a service provider that was to look into the matter in terms of a forensic investigation. That was done and completed, and the recommendations were provided then to the accounting authority. And part of that included the recovery of the payment from the service provider, and that was still in progress at the reporting date. The next one also deals with the same service provider that was paid 74 million, which should not have been paid because they did not render a service. And in this regard, again, when you raise the MI, the accounting authority then also appointed investigators. They looked into the matter, and there was disciplinary proceedings that were subsequently conducted. And in terms of the recovery, that is also again in progress because the service provider is undergoing a liquidation process. Then moving on to the next one is around the 350 grant payments that were made to people that were not eligible to receive a grant. So this is emanating from the work that we started during the COVID phase as part of our special report, when we identified that there were people that were being paid but should not have been paid because the internal controls were not strong to prevent those payments. So when we raised this matter, then the accounting authority had to improve their controls around this matter to prevent any overpayments or paying people that are not eligible. They also recovered some of the funds that were paid to those people through the grants process. We concluded that then the accounting officer authority is taking appropriate actions to address the matter. In the next slide, we also identified an MI that was related to allegations of fraud, whereby certain officials colluded to defraud a SASSA. So that resulted in fraudulent transactions to the value of 1.8 million. And the matter was since then investigated by the SASSA investigating unit and also handed over to the SAPS for further investigation. Both officials were subsequently dismissed for misconduct on other offenses. On the last item under SASSA, the MI related to an award that was made to an incorrect supplier for photocopy machines within the Eastern Cape region. So in this instance, we also raised an MI because there was an irregularity in terms of not awarding the contract to the supplier that scored the highest points within the procurement process. There was an investigation done by the accounting authority, and then there were officials that were found to have been involved in this transaction, and they were subsequently then issued with warning letters, and the service provider's contract has since also been cancelled. So those were the material irregularities that we've identified within SASSA, and we have also noted then the progress that is being made by the accounting officer as well as the accounting authority in addressing the irregularities. Thank you, Chair. I will now hand over to my colleague Buleng to proceed and give us the insights that we identified within the portfolio for the year 23-24. Buleng, over to you.
Thank you, Mbali, and good morning, Chair, and good morning to all the honorable members and my colleagues from the AGSA. As Mbali has indicated, I will take you through the reflection in terms of the service delivery, in terms of the insight that we have gathered through our audit process. On the current screen, what we actually be reflecting back in terms of the MTSF targets over the 5-year period to see in terms of what indicators have been achieved in the 5-year period and which ones were not achieved. So if you can see in terms of this particular slides, most of our targets have been achieved. The one that we did not necessarily achieve is the one that is relating to the percentage of districts shelters that needs to be built, that were relating to the GBV centers. I think Bali has already touched on it. Is the one that is not necessarily well defined, where we also had material issues on that particular one, and also increasing the number of victims of violence against women accessing psychological support. Again, this one is within the provincial DSD as well, but then it also have a direct impact in terms of our messages that are coming out in terms of GBV as well. And then in addition to that, we've seen that white paper on comprehensive social security being approved by cabinet was also not achieved within the 5-year term as well in terms of that particular one. And then those are the two ones that they did not necessarily achieve in terms of their 5-year term. Let's go to the next slide. And then in terms of the next slide, you can see that most of the targets that were on the MTSF have been achieved by the 23-24 financial year. I think here in terms of the different years, we just put the different years where they actually started to implement those particular indicators there. Then we can then move on to the next slide. And then on this particular slide, we're just concentrating on the 23-24 financial year. We're just indicating the indicators that were not achieved within the social development portfolio. So the key targets that are in the medium strategic 10 were the number of eligible beneficiaries receiving social grants, consolidated social protection system, at least one GBV shelter established in each district, at least one Kusalaka center established in each district. So the ones that did not necessarily achieve, they did not achieve the centers and the shelters, as already indicated, and in the current year as well, they did not really reach their target in terms of eligible children below the age of 1 that needed to receive children's grant, and that particular consolidated social protection system that needed to be approved in Pala in cabinet. In addition to that, we've seen that the department achieved about 83% of their indicators, and then SASA achieved about 90%, and NDA achieved 100% of their planned indicators in the 23-24 financial year. Impact of these targets not being achieved is that the targets not achieved have an impact on the delivery of services to the public in providing medical and psychological support and shelters. You will recall that they had initially planned to actually have about each center in all provinces, Kusaleka Center in all provinces. Currently, they have only managed to achieve 4. They also wanted to have a shelter in each district, but currently not all districts have shelter in terms of GBV. So we're saying that those particular ones also have an impact in terms of the lived experiences of our citizens. It means that an individual or a victim of GBV, when they don't necessarily have shelter in certain districts, they don't necessarily can go to the department to get that particular assistance or help, or in instances where they require maybe medical support or any support from the police services, because the centers were actually built to actually provide those particular support. So in those particular provinces where they don't necessarily have centers or shelters, that could then disadvantage the citizens of the country. We can then move to the next slide. So on this particular slide, we just want to elevate messages relating to the disbursement of grants. So what we have noted is that the department has spent about 99.4% of the allocation, which was about 259 billion. 96% of that 259 billion mostly relates to social assistance, which is basically grants. So you can see that I think majority of their money that has been allocated to the department is mostly relating to grants, and then they spent about 96.4%. They had a bit of a saving of 1.5 billion there. Majority of it is coming from that particular indicator that did not achieve at SASA, where they wanted to allocate a certain amount of grants to child support. So from what they have been allocated or budgeted for, they did not spend about 792 million on that particular grant, and also an SRT, currently SRT 370, no longer 350. They had a saving of 591 as well. This is as a result of changes in the measuring, in the means test, where they're currently doing a means test to see how much does a normal citizen have on a monthly basis, and then if they then meet that particular threshold, I think currently 634 that they're actually using. So as a result of that, some of the people were not necessarily eligible for that particular grant. And what we have noted again in terms of the 350 grants, in terms of the people that are actually getting the 350 grant and the child support grant, we're noting that a majority of our youth between 18 and 35 are the ones that are actually getting that particular 350 grant and the child support grant. That actually tells us that majority of our youth is currently unemployed, and they are nowhere in the system. For example, they are not registered with any higher education or doing any other thing. So if there's nothing done between on this particular age group of 18 to 35, it means that we might have a situation whereby we then really need to plan for social grants for these people for the foreseeable future, because in reality, if you're not necessarily studying or doing anything to try to equip yourself so that we can be in a position to self-sustain yourself, it means you'll only be reliant on the social grant for the foreseeable future. So we're saying that I think as government at large, we need to have plans so that we can almost try to equip this particular age group to be in a position whereby in the near future, they either have the skills to self-sustain themselves, or they're educated to then be in a position whereby they can be employable in the near future as well. And then in terms of the total grant expenditure, we just did a pie chart there just to indicate where is the majority of our grants going. You can see that 45% of the grant allocation is being spent on old age grant, and about 37% of it is on child support, which we're saying that 18 to 35 are the people that are included in that particular pie chart as well, and followed by disability grant as well. So those are the most key grants that are actually being paid in the country as such. So in addition to that, in terms of the overall observations as well, we noted that SASSA does not necessarily have system in place to ensure that they actually account for all the inquiries and disputes that the citizens or beneficiaries will then have. For example, if you are a beneficiary and you're in maternity and you have a certain query, maybe for example, you might not have received your grant at a certain particular time, you'll then call SASSA, or you'll go visit SASSA to inquire about that particular matter that you might have. So we're saying that they don't necessarily have system to ensure that there is a turnaround time or people are being assisted. If I do call SASSA now, then I will get somebody that will be able to assist me right then and there, and then they will be able to follow up. What we found is that we noted that if you were to make your call to SASSA today, and that the call is not being answered, and when they take your details, they will take the wrong details, because when you try to validate the number to confirm that this is a valid number, or to call that particular number, you'll see that the number is a 9-digit number, it does not exist, so forth and so on. So this makes questions to say, if then you did call and they said that they are supposed to get back to you within 5 days to resolve your inquiry, how then did they get back to the beneficiaries to say, Mr. Malabo, the reason for your queries as a result of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or the reason for your dispute or anything? So if they don't have valid numbers, they don't necessarily be able to then go back to the beneficiaries to actually tell them that what was the reason for the issue that they had at the first place. In addition to that, we noted that SASSA does not report on actual beneficiaries receiving payments, but rather on the funds transfers to the banks. So what would then happen is that SASSA will then take the money, receive the money transferred via bank server and post office. But what we've realized in post office, as an example, is that we have those beneficiaries that are actually will then have access to we don't have necessarily access to the money, so they will go to Post Bank to try to withdraw money from that particular Post Bank using their own transport, and then when they get to Post Bank, they find out that Post Bank does not necessarily have money to actually pay those particular beneficiaries, resulting in beneficiaries not being able to access money. You can imagine in certain rural areas where people have to travel for a long distance to access Post Bank, and only to find out that Postbank could not necessarily give them that particular money as and when that is they should be giving those particular money. So those are the issues that we have identified in the financial year as a result of grants distribution there. So these are the issues that we've already elevated to management to actually deal with these particular issues. We can then move to the next slide. So in terms of this slide, it's just observations that are also coming out from the 22-23. We just want to indicate how similar these issues that we have identified in the 23-24 and the 22-23. Some of the issues that we have identified in the 23-24 are similar to the issues that we've been communicating over the years, and there's still slow progress in addressing some of these issues. The issues of SRD 350 grants, where we've noted that grants were paid to ineligible beneficiaries, and also beneficiaries where they were actually double dipping in the 22-23 financial year. For example, person will be then receiving money from NFSAS and also receiving the 350 grants. Also what we've noted in terms of other grants is that there were still ineligible payments made to ineligible beneficiaries, where people do not necessarily are not eligible to receive that particular grants. And that basically, what is the root cause of that particular one is that SASSA does not really have a system to interface with the real-time data. As an example, when you go today, if you go to SASSA today and apply for, let's say, for old age grants, if you're above the age of 65, they will actually rely on the information that you actually provide to them. So if you come with an affidavit to say you don't have property to the value of about 700,000, you don't earn a certain amount of money on a monthly basis, then they will rely on that particular affidavit without them validating that particular information against all the available data within government to confirm that whatever that we're declaring is actually accurate. And on our side, when we come and do those validations against our data, for example, UIF, SIPC, and BES reports, Parasol reports, and so forth and so on, we know that there are certain people that should not necessarily be receiving grants, but currently are receiving grants. So that is one of the major root causes that we're actually getting there. In addition to that, in terms of our recommendation, we're saying SASSA should follow through on these exceptions and ensure that these leakages are actually recovered. So what we have seen over the years is that some of the database that we're actually using, we actually recommend SASSA to actually use the same database. For example, the CIPC database that we're actually using. What we're doing there is that we're saying that there's a list of directors within the CIPC in terms of directors of companies. We further do an extension test to say, are these companies receiving any kind of payment from government, where we then actually link them to the BES report in terms of the payments that have been made. And then we see that some of the companies are actually receiving significant amount of money from different government entities, and they are also getting some sort of grants from SASSA. So those are some of the leakages that we have already identified, and we also say to management, please try to use the CIPC data and a BES report, because these are the information that is readily available that they can actually use to verify beneficiaries as and when they apply. So we can then move on to the next slide. I think on this slide is the potential leakages that I've been talking about, is just giving an overall picture in terms of the employees, for example, at SASSA, that are currently receiving grants totaling to an amount of about 1.5 million. We still have Postbank employees as well that are also receiving grants there. We have grants being paid to directors of CIPCs. The one example that have been made here now is about 231 million. So a lot of these companies here are also receiving money from government entities as well. So it's a form of double dipping as well, because they're getting two benefits. In addition to that, we still have grants that are being paid to deceased beneficiaries here. So here the challenge that we have as well is that in certain rural areas, we have instances where beneficiaries or people within the communities do not necessarily report death to Home Affairs. As a result of that, the data from Home Affairs is not actually updated. So we'll then have instances whereby payment is still being made to people that have already deceased. So that, I think, is still a weakness within also at Home Affairs and SASSA as well. So I think one of the recommendations that we put is the biometric assessment, because with the biometric assessment that SASSA have already been planning to implement, it's not yet implemented. So if they implement the biometric system, we'll then have instances whereby they can actually confirm whether the person is still alive or not, so that they ensure that the payment that has been made is actually made to people that are also alive and not necessarily people that are deceased in that particular regard. So as I indicated, the root causes that are coming out again is as a result of the population register from Home Affairs not necessarily being updated with those particular issues. Also, SOCPEN system, which is the system that SASSA is using, is not necessarily effectively linked to all databases like your PERSAL, your UIF, your PERS, and your CIPC to ensure that beneficiaries are actually eligible for grants and are not necessarily receiving any other income other than grants as well. In addition to that, we're saying that there was no proper planning and budgeting by the department on how the Inspectorate of Social Assistance would be able to operate once legislated. So what we've seen in terms of oversight role, in terms of the department playing an oversight role on the social grant itself, because as part of the Social Assistance Act, it's required that the department should appoint an independent director that will play an oversight role to ensure that all the grants that have been paid to the right officials and as per the Social Assistance Act as well. So currently that position is vacant and we don't necessarily have that independent one, resulting in some of these particular issues happening because there's a lack of oversight from the department to SASSA on that particular regard. So with regard to our recommendations here, we say we need to actually, the department needs to have a plan to verify eligibility of social grants. I think they can also include them using different databases already indicated there. I think they can engage CETA to actually assist them in terms of linking the system with that particular databases. And also, SOCPEN is actually an old system as well. So they need to actually go back and review the system as to whether it's currently meeting their needs as well, is actually able to identify some of these weaknesses or to close some of these weaknesses, maybe the opportunity for them to try to get an additional a new system or to have some improvements on in terms of that particular system is something that they can actually try to look into. In addition to say that they need to take disciplinary steps against employees who do not declare that they're receiving social grants. I think that is part of consequence management. Mbali has already indicated when she was actually presenting the issues coming out from the 23-24 that some of the issues as a result of consequence management. What we're basically saying that in an organization where there's no consequence management, it means that everyone can do anything without any consequence management. And you would see that the numbers that we're reporting, because these employees that we're reporting here, there have been employees last year that we've reported that they're still receiving social grants. So in the absence of consequence management, these issues will then not necessarily be resolved because even the person that is employed tomorrow will know that there was a person that actually registered for grants and now consequence management has been implemented. So you open yourself to a culture where everyone can do as they please on that particular regard. And what we're also saying is that we then need to be in a position where the department actually appoint that inspectorate that can actually play that oversight role over SASSA as well. And then implement a proper process that will allow means testing for entrepreneurs. This will be the one that is relating to CIPC to ensure that we have a proper means test that is actually being done for those one on CIPC. And then in addition, we have messages or insights with regard to GBV victim as accessing psychosocial support. This one is linked to the two indicators that we indicated that were not achieved and they were not well defined, which is mostly the GBV shelters at each district and the Kuseleka one-stop centers at each provinces. So what we're noting that is that they were able to meet only 4 where they have the Kuseleka centers at Eastern Cape, Limpopo, Northwest, and the Western Cape. And all other 5 provinces like Northern Cape, Mpumalanga, KZN, GP, and the Free State currently don't have those particular centers. And then even the shelters within each district not all districts currently have all the shelters. We have about 52 districts, so not all of them actually have all those particular centers. What we also noted in addition to that, you would recall that the department had a GBV command center that was initially done with Vodacom over the years. Over the past 3 years, they have then cancelled the contract with Vodacom and then appointed a supplier by the name of Brilliant to actually assist them with that command center. So Brilliant currently is not necessarily meeting its obligations with regard to the contract. When we visited the center there, we noted that the command center was actually down where the call center was actually down where people or victims could not necessarily access social workers, because what then normally happens on the command center is that if I'm a victim of GBV and then I need any assistance, I can call the command center where I will be allocated a social worker that will actually counsel me on that particular call and ask me if whether I have a shelter, because at a certain point in time I could be in a house whereby my wife, as an example, is abusing me, and then when I actually make that particular call, they will indicate whether I need a shelter or if there's any medical attention that I need. The center will actually provide that particular medical attention, because on the center we have some kind of nurses and doctors that are there to assist for actually if you are raped, they will do the test and advise you. We actually have police that will also assist us in terms of opening a case. So in the absence of the GBV command center being operational, we're saying that the victims could be in a situation whereby on that particular day, they make a call to the command center requiring assistance, and the command center is down. Actually means that they were not able to get assistance, and they might not necessarily know where the shelters are or the centers are, resulting in that particular victim going back to the perpetrator's house. It might be that on the day that they go back where they required assistance from the department, they could not get the assistance, and they go back to the house. And that day, the wife or the husband or the perpetrator that was abusing the victim then abuse them one last time, and they are not able to wake up the following day, and it's their last day on earth. So that is the message that we're trying to deliver to the department, to say, let us ensure that we have the command center that is actually working and operational, and we also implement these particular centers within all the provinces so that all our victims can then be assisted. I think currently we are on the 16 days against women and children abuse. So we want to be in a situation whereby any victim can have assistance as and when that particular assistance is needed, and they can be able to be assisted with shelters and the Kusileka centers as well as and when needed. So the command center and the shelters actually play a major role in terms of the lived experiences of the citizens as well. So in those particular one, we also indicated that about 1.3 victims of GBV were assistance in the country in terms of the shelters and the centers of the department, as compared to about 202,000 cases that have been reported to SAPS within the country. You can see that they actually assisted about 1 or 2% of the population, and then they could be assisting more. It means it might be that the more have tried to call the call center, but they were not being able to assist them due to the fact that the command center was down. So that is the message that we're actually delivering here. If we can then move to the next slide. So on NDA, we mostly concentrated on the NDA funding project in terms of the CSO. So what we have noted there in terms of the CSO, that there was a bit of, we could not confirm in terms of, there was a bit of variances between the spending of the CSO versus the terms of the contract in terms of what they needed to do. In addition to that, when we get supporting documents, there were differences in terms of what was spent on, and also the bank accounts that money was distributed to versus for supporting evidence that they're providing for spending. There were no correlation between those particular ones. So we're planning to actually go a bit deeper in the 24-25 financial year to actually visit this particular CSO to ensure that they do exist and they are doing they are spending the funds in accordance to the agreements that they have with NDA. Some of the root causes that we have identified is that there's inadequate monitoring of funds allocated to CSOs to ensure that funds are spent as per the terms of the agreement. I think that's exactly what we're saying today. They are not necessarily monitoring this particular funding. They just give funding to CSO and they don't necessarily follow up and have plans to systems in place to actually monitor that funds are actually spent according to the agreement. And the impact of this is that based on the observation, there's a likelihood of financial loss being suffered by the entities. Funds might not have been spent as per the terms of the agreement. You can imagine in terms of NDA that a certain project that should be helping the community in terms of alleviating poverty as well in terms of the CSO. So if the money is not necessarily spent for those particular terms, we still have instances where we could be developing our people, but we're not necessarily doing that particular one, while CSOs are using money for all other things other than the one that NDA is actually mandated to. So what we have recommended is that management should develop and implement controls to ensure that there is proper monitoring of allocations in terms of the spending of these particular funds, an output-driven approach which focuses on the results achieved on the impact of the support provided by NDA from transferring of funds. So we need to be in a position whereby we know what kind of impact, what is supposed to, what should be the outcome of these particular funds. If, for example, it's being developed to upskill certain community in terms of farming or whatever that they should be doing, let us be able to see that particular impact after we transfer those particular funds. Maybe after 6 months where we actually monitor this particular one, we go visit the CSO, we see what they have done, we see the kind of impact that they have in terms of the community at large. So that's what we're actually recommending to NDA and the department as such. We can then move on to the next slide. In terms of the DSD portfolio at large, in terms of our overall observations. So this one is actually relating mostly to SASSA, to say that here we have those percentages of disputes and inquiries not resolved within a stipulated time frame, where we noted that SASSA in itself does not have the system in place for those particular one. I think I've already made an example to say, if you have a dispute over your grant not being paid and you call in the system or actually visiting SASSA at large, you will be in a situation whereby you're seeing that a beneficiary has came to SASSA office, let's say in Gauteng, and then you will see their name on the register. But when you go to the ICA system, you cannot necessarily link that particular beneficiary to the system. Does it mean this beneficiary was there were long queues, they were not able to be assisted? What then happened to this particular coming into inquiry? Because you expect that the person that actually registered their name on the register when they get in on the gate, they will also be on the system to indicate that this person's inquiry has been assisted and has been resolved within 5 days. So those are the issues that we have identified. Again, that is as a result of not necessarily having a system that can be able to actually collect and validate all the information relating to disputes and inquiries as well. And I think the other one is the one that relates to successful payments. I think I've already made an example of this one in terms of the ones, especially on Postbank, where money is not necessarily be accessible to them as and when they need that particular amount of money, resulting in them not necessarily meeting their needs, because the whole purpose of the grant system is to alleviate poverty. So you can imagine if Umakulu on the 3rd or the 5th of each and every month is requiring that 2,200 rand to go buy food for the family to eat, and they are not be able to access that particular money. It means that night they will be sleeping without any food. It might not necessarily be 1 day, it might be 2 to 3 days, because at times they need to go back to their houses, and to go back to their houses again might cost them money. They still need to go back and lend another man to travel back to Postbank to receive that particular grant. So it's actually disadvantaging the lived experiences of the citizens. So he's saying that as part of our recommendation, SASSA and DSD should do a detailed root cause analysis to determine factors that actually affects this grant system and that actually affects the inquiries and the dispute system not being able to cater for all. Implement appropriate actions to resolve the controls surrounding grants, use internal audit effectively to provide independent assurance on effective control. So we're saying that they should actually use internal audit, because some of these issues We identified them during the audit process. So we want internal audit to almost try to identify these issues, especially on the control assessment, to say these controls are not necessarily operating effectively, so that they can actually assist management implementing better controls with that particular regard. And they should establish the well-documented TIDs detailing definitions of indicators and how they're gonna collect data, especially in terms of the one for transfers being paid to the correct account. We're saying that they should be measuring themselves against people having access to that particular fund, because there's no point in distributing money via banks and not confirming whether beneficiaries have access to that particular money. So that's the recommendations that we are putting out to management. If we can go to the next slide. So in terms of the portfolio root causes and recommendations, these are the recommendations that we sent to management and the DGs and the ministers as well. So the key root causes that we've identified is that there's inadequate controls within the SOCPEN system to administer the grants and ensure that only eligible beneficiaries receive the grant system. I think I've already mentioned that SOCPEN is an old system. It cannot necessarily effectively integrate with all other systems to ensure that they detect some of these ineligible beneficiaries. Inadequate systems implemented to ensure that there is evidence that citizens with inquiries are attended to timelessly. I think is the ICA system there to ensure that ICA system does address all the inquiries of the citizens or the beneficiaries as and when they have those particular inquiries and disputes. Lack of processes to confirm validity, accuracy, and completeness of reported targets that is cutting across both the departments, SASSA and NTA, as Mbali has already indicated. On performance information, there we had a lot of issues in terms of indicators not being well defined. Some of the indicators, the supporting evidence that they provide for audit is not aligned to what has been reported in the APR. So misalignment between what has been reported and the evidence as well. So those are the issues that we have identified, and we're saying that they need to have systems and processes to be able to ensure that whatever that is reported is valid, accurate, and complete. In addition to that, I think level of consequence management is an issue. I'm not going to deal with it again. I think it's an issue across even in NDA and SASSA as well, even at the department. We've seen a couple of lack of consequence management, though it was nothing material for now. It's something that we say that the department should also look out for. Excuse me. And then some of the key recommendations here is saying the accounting authority should implement consequence management against all officials within the department, SASSA and NDA. The accounting authority should take adequate action to resolve weaknesses within the grant payment systems. The accounting officer should establish a well-documented TIDs. I think I've already had chance to that. Executive authority should monitor the implementation of the audit action plans and together with the department, exercise oversight over the distribution of grants at SAS. I think they can do that through the appointment also of the independent director for the inspectorate within the department to play that particular oversight role. We can then go to the next slide. And then our overall message to the select committee here on social services. Here, what we then saying is that we must monitor and regular follow-up on the executive authority and the accounting officer in terms of the implementation of the action plans, because we already given them recommendations in terms of what we are doing, what they are supposed to do. So we're saying the committee to just assist us in terms of following up and monitoring on that particular one. Also follow up on the implementation of consequence management against officials at both the department and the entities, and filling of all key vacant positions also at the department itself and the inspectorate, and then also follow up in terms of the measures to implement and resolve the current open MI at the department. So that is our overall message to the committee as well. So that's our messages and insights with regards to the portfolio as such. I will then hand over to Michelle. I see her camera is on, just to do the closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Buleng, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members. That is the audit outcomes and the insights from us as the auditors of the social development. Honorable Chair, I'm going to hand over to you. If there's any questions, we are here to deliberate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. And thank you to Puleng as well as Mbali for the detailed presentations. And thank you very much for the recommendations that you have made to us as the audit committee, not the audit committee, as the select committee. Honorable members, we can now take hands regarding this presentation. Honorable Sibande, you can go first.
Thank you, Chairperson. I wanted to also to thank the Office of the Auditor-General about this progressive report, and which is going to empower us more about some of the knowledge. But nevertheless, I will have a few clarities which I wanted to ask. Chairperson, I think in her presentation, he indicated that the purpose of the system, which is for auditing system, is to build a public confidence and also transparency, and the reports must be credible. That is true. But I wanted to maybe ask this question, slide 5. In slide 5, my worry is one, that there are things which they've raised, but there's no improvement. My questions are going to be linked to each other. You see, this about the internal control and some of these things that there's no improvement. But I think another weakness from us as well as the Office of the Auditor-General, to say there's no improvement, I agree, but I think people must be given a deadline that as from this time and this time, so that in future, when we argue on the basis that people were given a deadline. Like this thing that there is no improvement about the internal control and deficiency on grant disbursement. To me, it's worrying. It's a worrying fact because we didn't stipulate the big line. Also, the issue of the vacancies. You see, there was no satisfactory progress to fill vacancies. And some posts, they even be frozen, and they are currently unfunded. Currently, they are unfunded. Before they reach that this vacancy to be unfunded, to be closed, I think something must be done, because that is also the same application of the weaknesses, which is applicable. And then on slide 7, I'm a little bit concerned about the issue of the NDA and SASSA. You see, the issue of non-compliance, I need to ask that exactly. Yes, I know that they spoke about the issue of systems that are not talking to each other, etc. But let's get exactly about, because we do have the structure in terms of accounting officers, and so that you can get exactly which level is lacking. For an example, if you go to slide number 3, they put exactly the sequences that these officials, the internal audit, you see all the structures and that, where it lacks exactly, from which level, accounting officer or accounting or internal audit or whatever, to me is not clear. It is not clear. they must tell us exactly where is the problem, from which level, so that we can be able to make a follow-up on that one. And then also, I agree with the issue of this recommendation. I fully support the issue of recommendation. I also go to SASSA. With SASSA, there are a lot of crises. Let us go to slide number 9. Overall road cross, inadequate system, and no proper records keeping. You see, which level exactly which is failing to keep the proper records in terms of this SASSA, and inadequate review process in annual performance plan and report. These are some of the challenges which I wanted maybe to be taken on board, so that we can see how to do about it. Because now, exactly, the auditors, they've picked up some of these things, but also they never gave the deadlines that this must be done, and by this particular level. Because there are levels there. Internal audit, who's failing, who's who? You see? And then go to slide number lack of consequence management. That one, it talks, slide number 12. Indicated that's lack of consequence management. And then we go to slide number 14. Recovering process is still in progress. My question, it will be finalized by when? Because if you are saying, if you leave it like that, to be open like this, to me it's a problem. I'll put an example. Somewhere there's a place where I've noted that I think slide 14 and slide 16, when they recovered some of the payments of about on the amount of which was owing by, this one of 316 million, and also the 74 million that they've recovered. You see, if it was lowly in terms of recovering, some of these people, they can issue a statement that they've run insolvent. If a person is insolvent, you can't follow that person anymore. That money is gone forever. While some people are in a position to make a strategy as if they are insolvent, while not. They hide some of this money somewhere, somehow. So I think then I would recommend that this process also, it must have a deadline. Also, that for how long is it going to take so that we recover this money fully? Because they indicated that some money have been recovered, but some not. And then also, if you go to slide number, let me jump to slide number 22. Slide number 23. Yeah. 23. You see, there's something which is worrying me there. What is worrying me, I'll take 23 and 22. The issue of impact of targets not achieved. The targets which are not achieved is affecting the service delivery. At the end, there are people who have, you see, it have a negative impact in terms of politics then, to some parties, whereby fingers will be pointed to some people, while the service delivery is not with that particular party, it's with the institution itself, because it's having a negative, you see. And this one of this thing of providing medical, health, and psychological support, or all this thing, it reminds me the issue of asset demand. I think something must be done then. That's why I continuously need some deadlines that this thing, it can be done by this and this and this and this. You even put in the target of establishment of the shelters, like and Kuseleka centers. The thing is that I'll request that I'm subject for correction. Some of the provinces, they don't have those institutions or those structures as well, of which we must also be updated exactly that in this province, we don't have this institution, but it will take us this and this. I mean, I know the task of the auditors is something else, but in order for us to guide some of these people who are responsible within the department itself, so that it can know exactly when and how. And then also, there is one which is very, very, very touching. On slide number 23, whereby you talked about no system in place at SASSA offices to appropriately account for the following things. You see, my worry is that this thing of the system in SASSA, somewhere it's on slide number 25. It's having a very, very serious impact about issue of a double dipping. The double dipping, which also includes the paying grants to the people. You see, there is a thing let me put an example. Most of the provinces which are closer to the neighboring countries, like Mpumalanga, which is neighboring countries with Maputo and Swaziland, you can go and check during the grant payment how people are flocking from the other side and this side. The issue is that our system is too weak, can't detect that people they have dual citizenship. Some of the people who allege that they are having dual citizenship. They are able to exhaust our grant this side and go back. They come and collect the grant and go back. That is the problem. And also the payment of the deceased. I think SASSA must do something on that one. Even the Department of Home Affairs must do something. Because our system doesn't talk to each other. I'll put an example. It might happen that in Home Affairs, that person is declared already that he passed on. But if there's no person who's reporting in SASSA, that person will appear. Therefore, it poses a challenge to the department itself that they must go and rectify that one. That our system must talk to each other. Our system doesn't talk to each other. And that one of the employers receiving social grants, also that one is a shame and disgrace. Some of these people must be shamed so that we know exactly, and if possible, those people, they must get rid of them out of the system, out of the department, because they are very problematic in terms of the losses which we are accounting there. So I don't want to go to exhaust everything, but after that, the Auditor-General also, they are going to give us an indication, because if you go to slide number 29, it's also the issue of portfolio root causes and recommendations. I think there's no way where they indicated that maybe we must change the legislation in order to accommodate this and this and this. Because if it was then, it was going to cost us as a committee then to think how to frustrate those things. And also, lastly, Chairperson, I don't know how to put this one. Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned about the issue of the organogram, which was tabled to us earlier on, about this issue of procedures of people that from this level to this level. We must get exactly which level is lacking. And with this system which we're talking about, who's supposed to implement them? Who's supposed to do something about them? And then also, lastly, the thing which I was saying that I'm concerned, I don't know how to put it. You see, somehow I was listening in one of the meetings with the Auditor-General's office that some of the people, they are more than, okay, it didn't happen to SASSA, I never pick up it in this report, whereby they are being affected about some people, they have 5 years not submitting. You see, their work of their budgets. I mean, it's very, very embarrassing. And then in this way, I'd like to thank you, Chairperson, by giving me this opportunity. But I would love to ask, but let me leave it to other people to ask as well. Thank you, bye.
Thank you, Honorable Sibande. Honorable Aris, over to you.
Yeah, good morning, Chairperson. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, our previous speaker have covered a lot of my issues. But however, one thing that are for sure is that the lack of consequence management, and that result in officials just do as they please. Irregular expenses growth due to zero consequence management. And the entities is failing the country, and they must seriously tell us what other measures do they have in place since they cannot have consequence management in place. Because I cannot see any need for them if there's no consequence management. And then in terms of, I want to check with the entities SASSA and Postbank, are there any of these employees still in the service of SASSA and Postbank that have been received this illegal grants? And then I also would like to find out what measures are in place to monitor the CSO's funding from the NDA side, because funding being given to CSOs, and what are there any monitoring measures in place? And then the vacancies is been there for years. I was in the NA on the portfolio of social development. Every single year, the key positions, it remained vacant. It never get filled. And I want to know what is the plan to fill these vacancies in this financial year. And I also want to check with them how long is the command center not operational. And then SASSA has spent millions of rands of upgrading their system. The system failure of SASSA has been there for years, and millions of rands has been spent on it. I want to find out how much money in the past 5 years have they spent on upgrade of the SASSA system? Because seriously, this fraud and corruption in SASSA is just never ending story. And somehow SASSA is failing the country. SASSA are not doing what we expect them to do. This entity, we seriously need to look into the work of this entity, because this entity is seriously failing the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Aris. Honorable members, just some input regarding the questions that we are giving to the Auditor-General. Like some of the questions is for the Department of DSD. So let me just make sure that the questions we request, the questions that we ask to the Auditor-General, it must be regarding the audit outcome of DSD and not about the systems that are in place at SASSA, because as the Department of DSD, they must come and brief us. So they will come to the committee, and then we have the opportunity to give them these questions, honorable members. So let us just split this two. The Auditor-General that they presented.
The Auditor-General can give an indication of how much money has been spent over the
Now,
past
I understand,
5 years.
honorable member, I understand that. But especially the plan in terms of the vacancies, like you have requested. This is from the side of the DSD and not from the Auditor-General or the honorable member. So I'm not saying that it's not a relevant question that you have asked, but let us split this too.
Chairperson, it is the Auditor-General's prerogative to answer me on that.
No, I understand that, honorable member, but let us make sure that we split this. Please.
Chairperson, but I didn't ask the questions to you. I asked, it is their prerogative to say to me, no, this question belongs to the department, not yours.
Honorable member, I'm chairing the meeting. I'm not telling you that they can't answer your questions. I'm just saying to the honorable members that is going to ask questions from now on, honorable member. So it's their prerogative to answer that question. But I'm just indicating to the honorable members. Then Honorable Breed.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, I will try and be quick. I want to welcome the presentation by the Auditor-General. I think it's good, and as Honourable Ari said, we served in social development in the NA, so we've seen a lot of these problems, and it's good to see their findings. But let me maybe go to 3 specific questions that I want to ask. In terms of the audit action plans that the department and its entities have to submit and are following, are we seeing that they are actually following the audit action plans? And are their audit action plans speaking to the problems and the findings of the Auditor-General? That, and then secondly, I'm not sure if they can answer me. I know that 145 million rand was recovered, and there is about 930,000 plus of double dipping in the SASSA grants, but I want to know what is the percentage of the total irregular findings, and my Engelse woorde is nou op. I'm going to try and explain it if I make sense. What is the percentage? How much is that 145 million of the greater total of monies that will actually need to be recovered? You know, what is that? Because it sounds like a lot, but it might only be 20% of what is actually that needs to come and that needs to be recovered. So if we can get an indication of that. And then in terms of consequence management, the Auditor-General said that we are not seeing consequence management. And I would like to know, did we go into detail with that? What is the reason? Is it steps not being taken or disciplinary processes taking a long time? Is there a reason for that? And Chairperson, I would leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Breed. And now it's Honorable Du Plessis.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I'll just do a quick video so that people can see I do exist and it is me. There are a few questions that I would like for personal clarification, but before I get there, I am worried about the finding and the reason why, and Auditor-General, if you could explain this to me, is within our background notes, we have definitions of the various findings, and the one reads, financially unqualified audit opinion with findings, and I'm sure you know the definition was able to produce quality financial statements but struggled to produce quality performance reports and or comply with all key legislation. However, on slide 8, there is mention of a lack of, if one looks at the impact, the financial statements were not supported and evidenced by reliable information. So I'm just wondering how that links to the findings, and it seems contradictory to me. I think I might actually be missing something there, but if you could explain that. Then AG, I am always relieved when people talk about the lived experience within an audit. And I think this audit does show where the gaps have come in with the lived experience of South Africans who need the support. But the one question I would like to know, with the recommendations not implemented, especially with regards to systems that that process a variety of things and ensure that that processes are followed correctly. What budget were you able to determine what the budget was that was spent on the software and the systems? And then also it talks towards many vacancies. Are these vacancies in upper management, middle management, or entry level? Then the non-compliance with legislation is incredibly concerning, especially when it comes to fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And linking that with slide 16 that says officials cannot be held responsible. And there's a technical excuse for that, but it's a little concerning if we say we need consequence management, but we're not defining what consequence management is, but then we also say officials are not responsible. And I'm not sure that there is enough information on exactly what needs to be done in order to ensure that people have consequence. And especially with regards to the background notes that we received, and it says performance auditing is defined as an independent auditing process to evaluate the measures instituted by management. So management ultimately is responsible. Have they taken responsibility? Why are they not taking responsibility? To ensure that allocated resources are procured economically and utilized efficiently, effectively. So that is one big question that I have there. Then with regards to, on slide 28, there's reference to the need of oversight. And this is with indulgence, if you could explain the definition of oversight, as there are a lot of contradictory perceptions of what oversight would be, especially from bodies like the NCOP who have been tasked with oversight. And then there's also, and it links to management issues. There's a conversation about data issues and a lack of definition of TIDS or APPs. Why is this suddenly happening now? Is this suddenly new management? Has there been a shift? Why isn't there a history of excellence in APPs? Because ultimately we're looking at an end result within social development, which is addressing issues like GBV, hunger, and quite a few other issues. However, none of those indicators are shifting. So were you able to determine what is missing in the APPs? Is it management? Is it a lack of knowledge? Is it lack of process, lack of systemic or e-government support? That is holding up the end result that or the end lived experience that the DSD needs to have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Du Plessis. Honorable Mokwele.
No, thanks very much, Chairperson, and greeting to honorable members. But Chair, maybe before I raise what I want to raise, which I don't believe that there are many, I just want to bring to the attention of the members on the issue of decorum of the meeting. To say, Chairperson, one of the role of the chair is to chair the meeting and direct the meeting. I should think as members, honorable members, we must at all time respect the chair when the chair is sharing, and even when the chair is giving the direction. So that is what I wanted to give as the whip of this committee, so that I should think, I mean, we as the committee, we have been doing well since, but with the incident that happened, I should think when the chair is giving us the direction, we need just to adhere to the direction as he's the chair of all of us, including myself. Chair, the issue that I want to bring, let me first welcome the presentation by the Auditor-General. Also to agree with you to say that, Chair, the Auditor-General, they are like us. In fact, the Auditor-General, they are there. I mean, we can still call them the watchdog. they are responsible to make sure that the department follow everything that is in the prescript of law and follow what they are supposed to follow. So that is why I'm saying to us, we need also to welcome what they've deducted from SASSA and even the weakness and all the things that they've deducted from SASSA, which we all of us as the committee, we really appreciate. We really need the work of SASSA, even though there are some loopholes there and there, whereby like their system, they are not in place, which the role of the AG, what they are doing is to make sure that they follow all the prescripts of law. Because the issue of consequence management, in particular to SASSA, it can't be the responsibility of the AG. It is still going to be, once the AG give us information, if SASSA, they don't comply with what they're supposed to comply according to the law, which, remember, we are the ones who are making the law. So therefore, whoever is not acting in accordance with the law that we are making, it is us that we are supposed to make sure that if our department is not doing what it's supposed to do, as we are the one who are doing oversight over those departments, we are the one who's supposed to act. So those are the issues that I want to indicate. But the issue that also the AG, they've indicated about the issue of that even though there is an element of not compliance in majority of the things that SASSA they are doing, the issue that it like the chair indicated, when they come, we need to bring them again, unless the person with executive authority, which I want also to agree with the initial speaker who said that we want the person with executive authority, the minister, to come before us or whoever has got the executive authority, so that they are able to account for us that given this audit findings that they get, what is it that they are. In fact, I've got a lot of questions to ask, but unfortunately, the Department of Social Development, they still need to tell us, because they also told us about this thing of SOE, we call it the non-profit organization, that the chair, those are the ones that we found when we were busy with oversight, when we were in the Western Cape, to find out that when the department just give them money, they don't follow up, they don't even see what are they doing. Even some of them, they said they are not getting enough money. So like, in short, Chair, I've got a lot of questions. I've got a lot of questions that I've written there. There are many, but unfortunately, the AG, they were just opening our eyes to say that as select committee, look, these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that are happening. So it is still up to us to summon the department so that they tell us that what action plan do they have? What is it that, why they are not doing this? Why they are not, so that we are able to do our oversight role. So, Chair, in fact, that is the list that I can present before, but I really appreciate the eye-opening presentation from the AG, which we really say that as the department, also as AG, I should think in the next financial year, when they do audit again, they mustn't see other things recurring again. Because like I'm saying, we as the select committee or as the parliament, our role is to make sure that people that are getting services, we know even if they are getting the clean audit, we really appreciate the clean audit that the money are used. But if you just comply in terms of books to say, I'm able to do this, but when you go down to the ground, nothing's there, is a problem. But safe to say, Chair, like I've said, I've got a lot of questions, but to the department. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Makwele. Honorable members, I just want to say thank you to the questions and the other honorable members that are going to follow with their questions. Can we please not repeat the questions that has already been asked? Honorable Chirwa.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. Greetings to the Auditor-General. We are very grateful for the presentation and the work that you do. And obviously, as a portfolio committee, as members, and as the EFF, we support the work that is being done by the AG, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we do not envision emboldening the work and the scope of the AG chairperson. And this is the reason why the chairperson must allow members to make their contributions, regardless of what the direction of the contribution is, even if the chairperson at the time feels that this question particularly has to be raised with the department. It can actually expand the scope of the AG, because we all know that the AG has the wisdom to do its work and to also see its own shortcomings, and not necessarily just shortcomings, but to see places where it can expand its scope in holding these departments accountable. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about a Chapter 9 institution, that has certain powers and whose recommendations should be adhered to and not be discounted by departments. And this is said because this happens annually. On every single year, we get from the AG that these departments are not adhering to the recommendations, are not bettering their work, are not doing their work adequately and efficiently for the service of our people. Firstly, to the AG, an issue that we take up particularly is that there are too many stakeholders who utilize this department as a cash cow, and not the people that it was intended to serve initially. This keeps on recurring, and as Honorable Letitia even said, this is the case every single year. For the past 5 years, we've been hearing the same shortcomings, we've been hearing the same problems, but there isn't anything tangible that comes up from these interactions, even with the department, because it's not forthcoming as well. With the information that we send, we ask questions to ministers on a weekly basis. It's either they do not respond or they shy away from taking responsibility by shifting their responsibility to provincial jurisdiction. It's a problem that we have, more especially in the 7th administration, where ministers don't want to be held accountable. They don't want to be held accountable as political heads of these departments. Even if we find people who are responsible for certain roles in departments, at the end of the day, we've got these ministries, we've got these departments who have political heads who are supposed to oversee, supervise, and implement the purpose and the direction of the department. And it's not happening. It is not happening. So we need to find out from the AG as well if the scope can delve on even much more deeper to tell us who these people are, which are these NGOs that are taking money from the department, and who are their liaising officers, which departments in procurement, which departments in supply chain, which departments in processing these claims and processing these requirements from these NGOs. Who are the people that are responsible for all of these things? Because time and again, we hear the department is giving money to unregistered NPOs, is giving money to NPOs that have a record of not doing its mandate or feathering what they are meant to do with the money that the DSD sends to them. And second to that, now the conversation must now build on why is the Department of Social Development not building internal capacity? So to the AG, please broaden your scope into finding out much more peculiar detail. I think the department is constitutionally obliged to give you this information if you request it, so we are able to speak from a point of information, and not just the hearsay that we get from the department, because it's not all the time that the truth falls on our lap. Sometimes we have to dig for it in much more ways than one. And the department is constitutionally required to share information with the public that is held by the state. So it's not something that we'll be asking that is out of the ordinary. It's something that's already protected within the jurisdiction of the Constitution. And secondly, I think a problem that the AG highlighted is the issue of systems of communicating grievances that are resolved or not resolved. I think we want to hear from the AG what system then becomes the alternative, or then becomes the recommendation on how to validate complaints resolving, because this is actually a very big red flag. It's a big red flag because it means our people know the channels in which they should raise their grievances, and firstly, they might not be solved, or secondly, they might not be, as the AG already discounts and appraises the committee with. And it's a big problem because it means there are people who are sitting with problems and crises that the department is not solving, and nobody's being held accountable. What system then should we as a committee propose to the department to implement so we can hold them accountable to that particular standard. And second to that, we want to find out what other efforts the AG is taking up pertaining to failures of the department to implement the recommendations of the AG. I'm asking this because in other interactions with other Chapter 9 institutions, these engagements or these recommendations ended up with us recommending that, for instance, with the CGE, that they must take the Department of Health to court in relation for failing to implementing their recommendations pertaining to the forced sterilization of Black women and HIV-positive women in South Africa post-1994. And even though that case is ongoing, but then it alludes to the fact that the Chapter 9 institution can also explore other avenues beyond the recommendations. And we want to know what other innovative means the AG is employing that we can also hammer on as a committee, because also the failures of the department not only speak a bad light on the department, it speaks a bad light onto the select committee as well, quite frankly, because we bear the responsibility of holding the executive accountable. They come and they sit with us. They give us presentations. And it means that as a portfolio, as a select committee, we're unable, or we are also failing in our mandate of holding ministers accountable, which is part and parcel of our responsibility as members of parliament and also select committees. And Chairperson, through you, Chairperson, we should no longer have a big tolerance for ministers who postpone engagements on engagements that they knew prior about in advance, well in advance. We were not appraised on when exactly the minister decided that they are no longer available to sit in this meeting, because the notification only came in yesterday, which is too late. By the way, it is too late, because this interaction immediately after the AG presentation is important, because some of these questions, they water down. The people that are responsible for the public relations of the department, they start doing PR work to manage the next sitting that we are going to have with the department, and not necessarily dealing with the issues that at hand. And it brings down the integrity of the select committee. We become a select committee that barks but does not bite. We become a select committee that is unable to do its functions, to do its work. Other select committees are doing splendid work. And I'm saying this from a good place, Chairperson. Please don't take unkind to my words, but we want the best for the AG. We want the best for the people of this country. We want the best performance on the part of the select committee. And over and above that, on the issues pertaining to human rights, I think those are the ones that are most pressing. I think there's been other speakers who alluded to this just in short, really, because now we're talking about issues of human rights. Human rights are non-negotiable. We do not debate the issue of human rights. It cannot be a department that triumphs against the human rights of our people. That should be a big crisis that government takes on with unrelentingness and with commitment to resolve this issue. The issue of grants, it cannot be. It's a human rights issue. It's directly employed. It's directly linked to the issue of poverty. It's directly linked to the issue of even accessing healthcare, because if you don't get your grant, then you can't go to the clinic, then you can't go to the hospital, then you can't do anything. If there's an issue of GBV, and we sent the questions to the minister pertaining to safety shelters. We even made a notice without a motion without notice that the NCOP must debate the issue of shelters, of safety shelters. But unfortunately, all of these efforts are not forthcoming, and the people that pay the price are GBV survivors and victims. And the Department of the DSD to provide quality services that are directly linked to dignity, to life, to access to healthcare, to justice, are something that this select committee should not take for granted at all. And thank you very much to the Auditor-General for the work that you have given, because now you are, the intention, or rather the direction of opening the can of worms has been done successfully. But we need more as well. We've always appreciated your work, and it's just unfortunate that we've got a failing administration in this 7th, and where we have got ministers who don't pitch up for meetings, who don't answer questions of members of parliament. It's quite unfortunate, and it makes all our work more difficult because nobody's being held accountable. Chairperson, through your guidance, I think even our oversight visits to these departments must trickle down to speaking and interacting with these departments that are found to be wanting on these presentations. We need to see these accounting officers. We need to put faces to names now. We need to see who are the people that are responsible for passing through NGOs and giving money to NGOs that don't exist, that have never done the work of government continuously year in and year out. We need to see and put names to the faces, and much more must come out of that. These are criminal activities, quite
Thank you
frankly.
very much, Honorable Shirwa, because you are now making a speech.
No,
Because
I'm not
we
making
must
a
proceed in
Chairperson.
terms of the
Chairperson,
meeting.
you see,
Honorable Shirwa, you can
this
do
is
it
unfair. You
when the
gave the first
department
member
is
20
in your
minutes to
midst.
speak, Chairperson.
No,
I was counting, gave the first member
no.
20 minutes to speak. Allow me to finish
Shirwa,
my questions.
you didn't ask a question. You are making
I
a
am
speech now.
asking a question, and like each and every
Thank
other
you
member
very
who
much,
emphasized on their
Honorable
questions,
Shirwa.
give me that opportunity as a member of this select committee to do the
Very much,
same.
Honorable Shirwa. Thank you very much.
You can't do that.
Honorable
I'm doing my job.
Adriaan,
Why are you stopping me from doing my job?
because you are now making a speech, you are debating now.
Like all the other members who have emphasized on their points, I'm doing the same. Just because
You
it's
are not
uncomfortable
doing
to
the
you,
same.
I must be stopped.
No,
I'm asking
thank
my
you.
questions and making comments to the Auditor-General,
Thank
not
you
to
very
you.
much.
And where I speak to you, I mention you. Because now you are protecting the same people that are found wanting. You're protecting the same ministers that are failing in their departments. Why can't I speak about that in a select committee that is meant to hold them accountable?
Because they are not here.
But I can speak about it in the select committee and call the select committee out and call the AG out and make contributions that will better our work as select committee and the work of the AG. Why is that not acceptable under your chairpersonship? Why can't I make those contributions?
Because you are making a speech and not asking a question.
I am asking questions and I'm making comments, and I'm allowed to. I am allowed to ask questions and to make comments.
Chairperson, please allow the member to finish her input, please, Chairperson.
Honorable Aris, the member is not asking a question.
I am.
And we want to proceed, Honorable Chirwa. So can
I
you
haven't
please
even
proceed?
finished. How do you know my question when
Honorable
I haven't even finished?
Just listen. Can you
You
ask
listen,
your
Chairperson. We
question?
listened to you. We listened to the other members. We didn't disturb them. Now, when I have to do my work and ask my questions and make my comments, you are stopping me because it makes you feel uncomfortable. I'm a member of this portfolio committee, and I have every
Can
right,
you listen, please?
with utmost humility, to ask the AG and to engage on the presentation that was given. I have that right as a member of this select committee. Even if it makes you feel uncomfortable, I have a right to make comments.
Please listen.
Honorable members, please, I've pleaded with all of you to say that please
Nothing,
let
we're
us
pleading with you. Allow us to do our work. Allow us to do our work.
Honorable member, can we allow the chair to direct? Chairperson, can you just
allow me to finish my comments and my questions?
Yes.
Allow her to finish, please.
Honorable Chirwa, I mean, they will allow you. Let us allow the chairperson to give you the speech. Honorable members, why are we behaving like this? It's the very first time I see this. Please, chairperson, can you allow to conclude? Then let's respect each other, honorable members. Please, I beg you.
Absolutely, we agree.
Honorable Mokwele, I just want the honorable member to ask a question and not making the speech. That is all. Thank you very much, Honorable Chirwa.
Can I continue, Chairperson, with my comments and my questions?
With your question, please.
I can do comments as well, Chairperson. Since when are we not allowed to do comments in this select committee meeting?
Because you have already made your comments. Please proceed
but
with
you
your
must
question.
allow me to finish. You allowed the first speaker. I counted. You gave them 20 minutes. Now with my little 7 minutes, I must be stopped. Why? Why? This is a new tendency. And you are starting something that's going to be a problem, because next time when other members make comments, we're going to do point of orders. You are setting a very dangerous precedent of us not being able to make our comments to the AG.
Honorable Chirwa, can you just make your point so that we finish this week? Because now I think our time is already up. Please just make your comments and finalize.
Thank you. Exactly.
Please.
As I was. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Let me finish. Ngiyabonga kakhulu futhi. To the AG, broaden your scope and alert us as the committee. In what ways will you be able to ensure that even the questions that we ask that particularly seem like they are linked to the Department of Social Development? In what ways are you able to see or to link them to broadening the scope of how you make your investigations and the recommendations that you make? I thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Chirwa. You have asked your question, Honorable Adriansa. Over to you.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Good morning, everyone. I'm just putting on my video so that you can see it's really me, and then I'm going to shut it down, as you can see, for bandwidth purposes. So I would like to welcome the report that we have received. As stated with everyone who has made their points so validly and eagerly, I'm really concerned about the fact that it's popping up everywhere across the country, in every department, in the provinces, and that's the lack of consequence management. So I would like to ask, what specific processes are now in place for addressing the poor performance and transgressions within grants in the administration, more specifically grants and SASSA? Do you know if consequences are communicated to staff who do not meet performance expectations? And can you provide examples of how consequence management, have you picked it up in your reports, has been applied in the past, and how it is to change going forward? And from which date will this be implemented? Surely, as the AG, there should be consequence management to those responsible from your side as well. So what's the status quo on going forward, from which date? And are the staff that's being employed sure of what's expected from them and what consequences will be waiting for them if they don't perform and achieve the necessary targets? And it seems that the systems and tools to monitor and track is also a problem. So what are we going to use to track their performance, and which performance metrics are we going to use to ensure that the data is truthful and that we ensure data integrity? Thank you ever so much for the opportunity. I have completed my questions.
Thank you, Honorable Adriansa. Now over to Honorable Noble.
Thank you, Chair. Greetings to Auditor-Generals and honorable members. Considering the Auditor-General's reports on the 2023-24 financial year audit outcomes for the Department of Social Development, DSD, which highlights significant challenges in financial management, governance, and service delivery. I would like to ask, can the Minister provide a detailed explanation for the regression in audit outcomes, particularly the significant increase in irregular expenditure and fruitless and wasteful expenditure? What corrective measures will be taken to prevent such occurrences in the future? And what consequences will be faced by those responsible? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Noble. Honorable members, to the Auditor General, I just want to have the clarity on a few things. In your enforcement mandate that you got as the Auditor General in 2019, what does this enforcement mandate entails? And what your work as the Auditor General in terms of this mandate. And then regarding the employees of SASSA that is receiving grants, in total is 1,506,966. I just want to check regarding that. Does they still receive this grants, or is it being stopped? Or what is the issue around that? And the other one is in terms of the audit action plan. Did the department submit it? And in terms of the previous year's audit action plan, did they implement the recommendations on that audit plan? And did they, in terms of the timelines, did they done it in time or did they not? And in terms of the services with SASSA, that were the service provider that did not render services. In terms of that one, what are the measures that can be put in place to make sure that it does not happen again? And then the other one is the 931,812 grants that were paid to beneficiaries that is not eligible to get those grants. Where did the AG got that information? What systems did they use to get that information? Over to you, Auditor General Michelle, to answer the questions. But in terms of the questions that was asked, I just want to request you, as the Office of the Auditor General, can you please provide us with the written responses of these questions that was asked as well? Thank you. Michelle, over to you.
Thank you so much, Chair. Maybe just clarity before I finish, before I start. Should I answer the questions and provide written responses?
Yes, Michelle, please. But it must be in detail when it's written, and now you can just rush over it because our time is not so much. Thank you, Michelle.
Okay, no problem, Chair and honorable members. Thank you so much. Thank you for the inputs and some of the suggestions. I think that as the Auditor General, we do strive to improve how we work. I think over the years, you've seen that our reporting has grown. I think when we started, we talked about insights, which is something fairly new for us. And we see that growing because I think we touch more on the service delivery when we do the insights. And every year we expand on how we do our work, how we get the insights. And over the years, we are seeing more and more happening, and we will continue doing that. Maybe for the clarity in terms of the audit. So once we finish the audit, we do request that action plans be drawn up. It is important that the accounting officers and the accounting authorities do what they are required in terms of the legislation. As you know, that the accounting officers, their PFMA states exactly what they are required to do. There are sections, the accounting officer and accounting authorities, as well as officials. And we must also note that they have performance agreements that they should be signing while they do sign with the accounting officers. So in terms of performance management, it should be with the Director General as well as the accounting authorities. From our side, we will then request the DGs and accounting authorities to create this action plan. The action plan will then be monitored by the accounting authorities. We will also come in, and there is also internal audit that we also request that they also look at those action plans. It is unfortunate that some of the action plans are implemented, some of them are not implemented. And the committee is more than welcome. And it's one of the things that we ask the committee to also follow up on those action plans to see where it's not monitored. Where it is not monitored, and this is where the powers of the Auditor-General comes in, and we see that maybe there's a finding there that meets our definition of what we call a material irregularity. And you'll see for SASSA and for DSD, there are material irregularities that we have raised. We then take it through the process of our extended mandate. We see that if this is of these items meet the definition of a material irregularity, if they do meet that definition, we then issue a notification. We then request the accounting officer to look into that particular matter. And then we then follow up whether those those commitments by the accounting officer are followed through. And if you recall, if the accounting officer or accounting authority does not follow through, we then issue them what we call a remedial action. So we give them an instruction to then act. And should they not, then we issue a certificate of debt. We have seen through the material irregularities that we have presented to the committee that there has been action. So you've seen that some officials are disciplined, some areas are being taken to the state attorney for debt collection. So we are seeing movement. The concern that we have as the Auditor-General or as the auditors of the social development is that we need to see a culture that is changing. An audit, we cannot audit via a material irregularity process or investigation process. Officials must come to work and do their job on a daily basis. And here, this is where we urge that consequence management must be taken. And consequence management can be taken in various aspects. But most importantly, if there's a transgression, it is the responsibility of the accounting officer to go and investigate, to take the person through a process that is also allowable by the Labor Relations Act as well. So there is quite a lot in play in terms of performance management, but this must be done. In SASSA, we've seen that some of the cases take long, the investigations take long, and therefore it does weaken a case in terms of labor relations, in terms of how that process needs to unfold. And we've highlighted this to the accounting authority that your cases should not take too long, and then you end up saying that it has almost prescribed, which is not correct. You need to make sure that when there's already a transgression, you investigate. You shouldn't take more than 6 months, and you should have already implemented the consequences. Consequences can mean you take a person, give a person a warning, you dismiss a person. So there are different sanctions that you can provide a person. But once you sort out this consequence management, culture throughout the environment should improve. Nobody should be comfortable to transgress. And I think that is where, as the AGSA, we would like to make sure that officials, and that's why we have the accountability ecosystem, that everybody must come to work and do what they are required to do. And that is a culture that would need to be embedded. And that's why we always talk about consequence management, and we say this needs to be implemented, and it needs to be implemented timely because it will change a culture. Yes, as the office, when we see something, for example, your GBV center, we've observed it, we've given the insights. We will then see if it we'll take it through our powers or not, if it's necessary, and that process will continue as we are doing the audit. And those things are very important for us to say. There should be GBV centers within every province. There is a need for the country. We're looking at the system, so we are meeting with SASSA regularly in terms of what is it that they need to implement. We have seen that the databases that we use, for example, your CIPC, your Home Affairs, they also have it. But the problem is that the way that their system is, that is not real time. And that is the key process that needs to be implemented, that it cannot be, it should be preventative, not reactive. So already when you are applying, the system should already be integrated with other systems. So even though they will get the data and check as well and make sure that the people that they've identified, they follow up with. but it's really a more detective and not necessarily preventive. And we're saying that they need to then look at their system and make sure that it's integrated. So that if somebody has passed away, I think there was the comment that was made to say the system, there are people with dual citizenship. So if you are merged with Home Affairs, you should be able to pick up some of these things, for example, of dual citizen. But if you're going to pick it up 6 months later, you've already paid that person a SASSA grant. And we're saying that you need to implement it almost immediately. So Chair, I think from my side, those are the areas that I thought let me cover. But can I, sorry, there is a sound. Okay, thank you very much. Can I just hand over to Mbali, because I am cognizant that you said you don't have time, to my deputy, if she wants to maybe add to some of the areas that I have maybe not touched on adequately.
Yes, thank you, Michelle.
Mbali, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Michelle. I think at an overall level, you've covered in the main the key questions that came from the committee. Most of the questions that I'm noting now, it's where we need to provide detailed responses based on what the clarity that the members are seeking. So, Chairperson, at this point in time, I don't have anything further to add on a high level, but will respond then to the detailed questions as directed by the Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you, Mbali. So I just want to thank the Auditor-General, Michelle and Mbali and Puleng for your presentation. And can you, we as the committee really appreciate this presentation. So it's really eye-opening for us as a committee. So thank you very much. You can leave now, Michelle, because we must still proceed with other matters in the committee. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bye.
Marcel, we can proceed in terms of the minutes.
Yes, Chair, I have flagged the minutes of 20 November. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, the minutes of 20 November is in front of us. Can I get a mover for the adoption of the minutes? Honorable Mokwele.
No, thanks very much, Chairperson. I move that as the committee to adopt the minutes as presented as a true reflection of what transpired on the said date. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mokwele. Honorable Adrianse.
I move to second the adoption, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Adrianse. So, honorable members, we are now at the end of our meeting. Thank you very much for your time and for your input in terms of the presentations of the AG. We as the committee must work together with all this Chapter 9 institutions to see that the departments do what they're supposed to do. So thank you very much, honorable members. The meeting stands adjourned.
Thank you, Chairperson. Bye-bye.
Bye, Honorable Sibande.
Bye-bye.
Honorable Adrianse.